Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all and in such strong numbers here. We're here today to reflect on a number of technologies that are likely to have an impact on our lives and livelihoods, and it's only appropriate that this discussion, which has a strong science angle, is also happening in a room here that looks a little bit like a lecture hall, or sort of a mix of a lecture hall and spaceship. So awesome to have you here. My name is Sebastian Bukow. I'm heading the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution at the World Economic Forum. We are the center that works on technology policy and digital transformation. And I am joined by three distinguished experts. To my left, Professor Catherine Daniel. She's the director of the School of Cybernetics at the Australian National University. Next to her, Professor Lee Sang-yup, Senior Vice President Research and Distinguished Professor at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. And at the far end of the table, Dr. Frederick Fenter, the Chief Executive Editor of Frontiers. And Frontiers is a leading publishing house that is working with us on the 10 Emerging Technologies report, now for the second time. Indeed, this discussion will be anchored on this report. I hope that those of you who are following the session here in the room have a one-pager where you can have a quick overview. Those who are following us online should find the link right under the video feed. Everyone online and in the room feel also free to share the report, to tweet about it, or use other social media platforms with the hashtag AMNC24. We're not going to go into great detail on each of these technologies, but very quickly this year we have some technologies that really focus on the role of AI in discoveries. We are looking at privacy-enhancing technologies, AI for scientific discovery, and immersive technologies in the built environment, and also the use of AI in that context. But AI would, of course, not function without technologies for sensing and communication. So there are things in this report such as reconfigurable intelligent surfaces, high-altitude platforms, and integrated sensing and communication. We will hear a little bit more about some of those technologies in a second. And we have a strong focus again on facing planetary challenges with technologies such as elastocalorics, which are used for cooling or heating, microbial carbon capture, and alternative livestock feeds. And in the healthcare segment, we are looking at genomics for transplants. So that is a very diverse, very broad set of technologies, very ambitious to touch upon some of them here in half an hour. Before I turn to you, Fred, maybe just one word on why we are doing this work. We believe that technology is an important structural force, but we also don't believe that the future is preordained by technology. It's a force that can be directed, that must be directed, and that requires leadership. And ultimately, this is what the World Economic Forum is about, to bring diverse group of stakeholders together to understand the impact of these technologies, but also to shape this impact. Now, we have come up with these 10 technologies in our report. It's always quite a complex work to do so, part art, part science. And the person that has directed that work and his team is Fred. So why don't you just share with us briefly, before we go into the substance, what's been the methodologies? What filter do we apply, and how do we apply that filter?
Okay, thank you very much, Sebastian. And just to start by saying that at Frontiers, we're very pleased for the second year to be the co-publisher of the Emerging Technologies report. The way we went about it was beginning with a survey. So we developed a survey, and we sent it out to about a network of about 2,000 people, which included the Global Future Councils of the World Economic Forum, but which also included the College of Chief Editors at Frontiers. From that survey, we received what we considered to be 300 substantial responses, and that was the first list of the technologies that we considered for the report. And then at Frontiers, we developed what we call a trend analyzer, which is based on artificial intelligence algorithms, to whittle that down to a group of 70 technologies. We looked at things like the rate at which publications are appearing on these subjects, the rate at which these publications are cited, patents that are being filed, and also funding trends. And so these 70 candidate technologies were then presented to the steering group, and they selected 10 of these 70. And the criteria that were applied were four. First of all, novelty. We had to be convinced that this was a technology at an early stage, but emerging with the potential of becoming, of contributing to a real societal solution within 3 to 5 years. Applicability, we looked to make sure that this technology could demonstrate real benefit. Depth, which means that more than one company, more than one institution, more than one university is pushing forward with developing this technology. And finally, power, which simply expresses the need to find the potential in these technologies to become a real game changer. So just in a short summary, Sebastian, that's the approach that we took.
Professor Lee, if I can turn to you. It's of course always difficult to pick which technology you personally find is most consequential, maybe also most surprising, but would like to get your perspective on this work. You're a long-standing member, I think almost from the start, of the science committee that's actually selecting these technologies. What I think stands out this year is that the bioeconomy is playing a big and growing role in the report. So over to you. Maybe give us a little bit of a behind-the-scenes view on how you experienced the identification of these technologies, and maybe also highlight just an example for us, and also why you have picked this example.
Yeah, so over the last 10 plus years, you have been giving me this difficult question all the time. I think if I have to choose one important technologies out of the top 10 list this year, I need to be a little bit biased. Otherwise, I would choose all 10. So if I give my bias, I would choose AI for scientific discovery as the most important and impactful one. And the reason is as follows. Because, you know, AI, of course, everybody in this room uses now, and so does scientists and also engineers. How do we use it? Well, we can use it for mining data and mining literature using large language model or sometimes small confined model. Plus, you can use a ChatGPT type, dialogue to validate your hypothesis or priming your hypothesis. So a lot of scientific studies can be done using AI. But let me give you one example that will lead to some more realistic benefits. So obviously, you can use AI for designing new materials for new battery, high-performance battery. You can use AI for drug design and drug discovery, a lot of different things. But I can share with you one example that is, do you know how many people die because of adverse drug events caused by drug-drug interaction? So in the United States alone, it's about 110,000 people die out of taking multiple drugs. But it's important because FDA approves drug after checking complete safety, and that's how when they approve each drug. But people older than 65 take average of 5 drugs. So these individual drugs are all safety approved, but by taking multiprogram, 110,000 people die in the United States per year. This is not right. So we actually used AI, deep learning, based study of interactions out of 2,000 drugs. Then if you just take 2 combinations, it's already more than 2 million combinations, opportunities. And if you mine all the data published or reported to date, there are about 190,000 known adverse drug events. Then what about the other 2 million interactions. Are they safe? So I called the dean of pharmacy, dean of anywhere, and nobody knows because that has not been studied. So we ran deep learning algorithm and found 460,000 additional potential adverse drug events. So this kind of thing is what AI can suggest. Of course, decision will be finally made by medical doctors, but at least the scientist and engineer can provide such information that can be used by medical doctors. So this is just one example. What was the most surprising technology? Again, I think many of these are so interesting technologies, so some of them are actually surprising to me, but I would say carbon capturing microbes is probably the most surprising one because the efficiency is not that high. But why was it selected? Well, if you look at the world, microorganisms fix CO2 like plants, but not all of them, only few of them. Those few include microalgae or cyanobacteria. But now, people like me, metabolic engineers or synthetic biologists, are equipped with a lot of tools, plus AI, so that we can design the metabolic pathways, even create enzymes. Enzymes, by the way, are life form catalysts that perform reactions. And we can now convert any microorganism, eat CO2, and then spit out plastics, fuels, chemicals, drugs, food compounds, nutritional valuables, a lot of different things. One problem left, well, actually two problems. One is efficiency. Efficiency is too low still. And number two is we need to go through all these regulatory inspections because there are some hurdles we need to overcome. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of summary of what I like, exciting and surprising.
May I let you comment for very briefly on actually the 2 points you made, AI for scientific discovery and microbial carbon capture. When we work with scientists, there's always a lot of excitement about the potential of the finding, but then if you press a little bit harder, then cost comes up quite quickly when we think about moving technologies from the lab into the market. Do you expect that AI will also play a role there, bringing down the costs and accelerating the path from the lab to the market?
Absolutely, but not AI itself. AI itself will not do anything. But if AI is coupled and integrated with other technologies, including biological techniques, then it can be very powerful to establish high-performance microbial cell factories that just pumps out your products at the rate that has never been achieved before because you have redesigned the enzymes, redesigned the pathway, so you get the maximum product yield, so that will raise up the economic viability. But again, we have a scaling up issue for two reasons. Number one, over the last 5 years or so, every price doubled, except my salary. So construction cost, because scale up here means that you need to construct a huge plant, right? But that one now became even more formidable because of all these high costs. So that's number one. Number two is you need to supply feedstock, the food for the microbial cell factory. And for the petrochemical industry, that's crude oil or natural gas, which we have well set up logistics. But for biomass or CO2, we still struggle how we're going to do that. So scaling up feedstock supply will be the key issues we need to address, plus, of course, the regulatory collaboration so that the world will be in good shape handling all these things.
Professor Daniels, let me turn to you. A good number of the technologies we identified, the group of experts we worked with identified, has potential benefits for the planet. As a professor of cybernetics, you're looking into complex systems, and it's always, of course, difficult to say, oh, there's a single technology that's going to improve and really save lives, etc. So it's all relatively complex. But what potential do you see when it comes to technology in addressing planetary challenges?
So I think many of these emerging technologies really have immense potential to support sustainable development across many of the social, environmental and economic lenses that we're really interested in. I think all of the technologies in the report, particularly if we consider them as a system of technologies, and if we consider them in a way that's purposeful and aimed at social and environmental and economic good, I think we're going to see that collectively they will be able to move us forward. Just taking the example, for example, of AI for scientific discovery, I think there are lots of ways that we can aim this technology for a whole range of societal benefits. There's a lot of potential, for example, in early warning systems. How do we understand the environment in a more targeted way? How do we bring together a lot of the work of the scientific community across disciplines to be able to look at these things? How do we think about applying these, particularly around reducing waste and enhancing circular economies? And I think in this collection of technologies, there's some really good examples for that. One of them's the alternative livestock feed, which I think's got a huge amount of potential to use some of the food waste out of our food systems for those, using algae, using some of these other really innovative technologies to improve, I think, some of the challenges around things like land conflict. So we can reduce land conflict potentially by reusing things that have already come from the land, not using new land to produce new food for other things. I think in terms of responsibility, there are many of these different technologies that can be used for good, and I think they also span the entire AI tech stack, and in fact tech stacks that aren't necessarily AI related, plus all of the other benefits. I think, for example, the high altitude platform stations are a really interesting one that may be able to help to bridge some of the digital divide. The fact that they can potentially open up internet access for remote areas, communities who have previously not had a really good internet and provision. I think this is a really exciting one for many areas around the world. And I think the other interesting one is the elastomerics, because if we think about all of the challenges with, say, data centers, cooling, many of the technologies that we're developing, they're going to use increasing amounts of energy and water. And so having these new forms of cooling systems and heating systems, I think, are going to be really important game changers.
And maybe one little follow-up there. You look, as you said, you don't look at individual technologies normally. You look at entire systems. And of course, especially when it comes to climate, there's a lot of debate about the role of technology. There's a lot of concern about unintended consequences, like a keyword like geoengineering, etc. What are your reflections on actually dealing in an ethical manner with technologies that could be scaled up for good, but that of course could also have negative consequences? How can we put in the right safeguards? And maybe that's a question that we could also.
I think one of the really important things is helping the scientists and the people creating these technologies to act responsibly while they're developing them. And a lot of that comes back to the education systems on how people are aware of the technologies in that systems, that complex systems context. So the fact, for example, that if we're going to develop new data centers, they're likely to go in prime agricultural land. They're likely to require a whole lot of water, energy systems. How are we developing these really complex connected systems, and how are we helping the startup founders in their decisions every day to make very small adjustments, for example, in their algorithms and in other things that can make a really big difference to the overall situation. So I believe there's a education imperative there, and for each different country and culture to think about what kind of systems do they want to create. What are the cultural constraints, the language constraints, the kinds of data that we may want to include in there, and what don't we? And how can we then do that right at that very early level? Because once it's started, very difficult to pull it back. Much easier to do it right at the beginning.
Startup founders, good keyword. Can you raise your hand if you're a founder or a CEO of a startup or an investor? Okay, that's roughly half of the room. So one last question to you, Fred, and then I want to open it up to the room. So already think of your question and then raise your hand. keyword startups. We also looked for the first time at funding trends. Fred, maybe you want to give us a little summary of what you have identified there.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Sebastian. Yeah, so the funding trends this year are a new feature in the report. And I think we all understand why these are critical drivers in terms of how we monitor how these technologies are emerging. It was one of the central pieces of information, and it really provided important guidance to the steering committee as they selected their technologies. At the high level, what we've seen is that the sort of the lead in funding across the board, across the 10 technologies, is from the U.S. But we're also seeing that China is very quickly rising as a contender at that high level. I think also, just to say a few words more specifically, it's very interesting that in this report that there is a cluster of data-based technologies. We talked about the privacy-enhancing technologies, the high-altitude platforms, and the integrated sensing and communications. But there's also one that I'll maybe say a few more words about. That's the reconfigurable intelligent surfaces. And so this is the technology that takes ordinary walls and surfaces and converts them into elements for wireless communication. So this is a technology that is, what we're seeing is receiving funding from a diversity of industries, from mobile telecommunications, from software and internet companies, from companies interested in energy and utilities and electronics. So we're already seeing the very broad applicability of this technology across those very different industries. We're also seeing investments in specific areas, and this is around enhancing wireless networks and connectivity and improving energy efficiency. So real contributions to society are on the horizon. In specific, if we look at how this investment is playing out internationally today, the leading countries in this technology are from the United States currently, followed by China, the United Kingdom, Sweden, and then Australia. So this technology is clearly rising to global recognition for its strategic importance. And probably we would expect that the first adoption of this technology will likely be in one of the countries that I just mentioned. We can expect that these leaders will gain a competitive edge in telecommunications and related sectors. And just to finish by pointing out that, like all the technologies that we talk about in the report, cross-sector collaboration will be the key to taking these technologies forward. This is a requirement, actually, to ensure that they deliver the societal benefits and are able to scale at the 3 to 5 year time frame that we considered for this report.
We have a couple of minutes left for questions and comments from the audience. So please do raise your hand visibly if you want to come in. We have someone here right at the front.
Thank you all panelists for this great insights. That's really eye-opening. I'm Elise. I'm in the new energy business and I'm based in Beijing. So my generation is kind of grow up taking globalization for granted. But nowadays, I think it's no longer the case, at least for some specific industries and areas. For example, if you get carbon credits in China, your supply chain partners based in US or Europe may not recognize it. So my question is, what are the initiatives we can take to drive mass adoptions across the world? I mean, to make these advanced technologies benefit the world in a most effective way. What is like the winning recipe for the new age?
What is it? Road transport?
Can you summarize the question? I think the question is about collaboration.
It's about scale up.
Yeah.
It's about, you know, in this age that you can no longer take globalization for granted.
Opportunities for scale. I think it would be interesting to hear from both our academic leaders on how you actually think about scientific collaboration globally in this day and age.
I can start
Yeah,
if you'd like.
do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think academic collaboration and international collaboration is going to be vital. And in fact, these kind of fora is really important too, working across business and academia. I think in terms of scaling, one of the real challenges is having enough people who are translators between different cultures, and that can be business culture, policy culture, academic culture, and then across global environments. So there are some really amazing ways that we can coordinate in academic environments to support early career learning about how to do research and how to scale things early. For example, there are international industry-based PhDs where you can have somebody based in a company, supported by a lab, supported by tax breaks from government. These can be in startups so that you have a ready-made collection of people once they've graduated from their PhDs who are ready to take these to the world. So we can actually train our people better to be ready for this complexity leadership and how they can look at what's scaled well in the past, how they could take the same dynamics and reapply those for these future technologies.
Well, I think there is no limited international collaboration, though, because there are many different schemes you can actually perform internationally collaborative research projects. For example, even Korea can now participate in Horizon Europe if you want. So we have collaboration set up with Europe. I do a lot of collaborations with China. That's why I had to stop by Beijing on the way to Dalian. And also United States. We have official program with the United States to do it. Multinational one is different one because you need a common problem such as development of small molecule drug for treating COVID-19. And then we worked together among 16 country scientists and we finished successfully. So there are ways of doing collaboration, but just intention to do and the correct support at the right time by funding bodies will be probably important to accomplish that. And what was the issue with the scale-up?
I think that was collaboration as an enabler of scale-up. So okay. I think you answered the question very well. Any other questions over there?
Yeah, hi. As you're narrowing down those 70 technologies to the top 10, I'm curious how you thought about the time horizon for these technologies to develop, and out of the 10, which one would you say would be the most likely to be the earliest to actually get commercialized and start having meaningful impact?
Yeah, what I would say, I'll start the discussion. For the time horizon, it's very clearly technologies that are capable of providing a real solution to society at a scale within 3 to 5 years. And so, and I think that probably the ones that are most likely to come on board the quickest, again, we go back to artificial intelligence and scientific discovery, because that's really something that's already happening today. And I think that what we can just anticipate is the scale to which this will become a primary tool in most research laboratories around the world, regardless of the subject of study.
I think the other indicator is, to your question on time horizons, we are looking at technologies where there is already entrepreneurial activity, where there are already application cases, which might not be there yet at scale, but there are proofs of concept, so to say, and proof of an existing market. There was a question right behind.
Hi, I'm from FT Chinese. Sustainable policies and agricultures are now facing a huge backlash from farmers and very important voters groups. So energy prices and inflation are making it pretty expensive for farmers to adopt sustainable technologies. So is there any suggestions, especially for governments or private sectors? Thank you.
That sounds like a question.
Yeah, sure.
For you.
I think every country is different in terms of their government regulation, their policies, and their incentives for farmers. particularly in Australia, in our agricultural sector, it's fairly highly regulated. We have water markets, for example. Because of the value shifts linked to these markets, it's quite easy for our farmers to then invest in new technologies because they're always trying to work towards the kind of highest value products. That has significant challenges in terms of environmental impacts and design of those markets. And then internationally, I think there are many opportunities where incentives can be aligned. Often in these, with these technologies, they can lead to more productivity, less use of chemicals, less use of fertilizers. There have been some great agri-tech examples in this forum that have been there. So I think often it's about farmer-to-farmer learning, country-to-country learning, understanding that change can be beneficial and an opportunity. It doesn't always have to cost a lot.
I think that's a great closing comment, if I can say so, because we're already at the top of our half hour. I think the question that you just asked is really important because that brings us to where we started. Technology doesn't solve problems. In the end, it is people that solve problems. And to solve large-scale problems requires collaboration. And that's, in the end, what this report wants to do. You will see, if you dive a little bit deeper, we are highlighting those technologies. We are highlighting risks. We are highlighting opportunities. But in the end, what we are highlighting is that it is about building the right foresight to make sure that we are dealing with risks and realizing opportunities. So thank you very much for your interest, and we wish you a great rest of the day. And please join me also in thanking the panel here.